Hello everybody, in this video I'll show you how to use the vintage sketch to Photoshop action. So before we get started, let's view a few examples. With this section, you have to open your main image and mark your main subject area like this. With any color you can mark your main subject area and then run your action. Once you run your action, you will get something like this. It creates vintage elements and vintage paper effect and creates a shading style of your main subject area. You can customize different elements and the shading layers and styles. We'll go into details when we run the action and explore the various layers and groups that are created. Let's view a few more examples. You can also add your own signature at the bottom of the image. I'll show you how to do that once we run the action. The action creates 10 different color presets. Like this is the color effect 6. This is the color effect 7. Here are a few more examples. Okay, so now let's open our image. We'll be using this one. So before we proceed, we need to make sure few things are set, like go to image mode and check RGB color and 8 bits per channel is selected. Next, click this flyout list and select panel options. Make sure use default masks on fill layers is checked, and also add copy to copied layers and groups is also checked. Now if you need to check your image is a background lock layer. If it's something like this, like layer 0, you have made some operations like cropping or something else, your layer can look like this layer 0 or something else. In that case, you have to turn it to a background lock layer. To do that, go to layer, new background from layer. So to turn it to a background locked layer. As for the image size, this action works fine with images from size 1500 pixels to like 3000 4000 pixels wide, it works fine. It also works fine with images of any resolution, like from 72 pixels per inch to 300 pixels per inch. You can use any images that you like. Okay, now let's load up the action. To do that, go to Window, Actions. It will bring up the Actions panel. Click this flyout list and select Load Actions. Select the Vintage Sketch to Photoshop action, which comes with a bundle, and click Load. Next, we have to load the brushes. To do that, go to Edit, Presets, Preset Manager. Select Brush from this drop-down menu and click Load. Select the Vintage Sketch 2 brushes, which comes with the package, and click Load. Next, select Patterns from this drop-down menu and again click Load. Select the Vintage Sketch 2 patterns and click Load. Now select your brush tool and make sure your opacity is set to 100% and your flow set to 100% and your mode is set to normal. These three parameters must be set as shown for the action to work properly. Now for Photoshop CC 2018, you have a smoothing parameter. You can set it to any value you want. It doesn't matter. For earlier versions of Photoshop, you won't be having the smoothing parameter, so it's fine if you keep it to any value as you want. Now let's mark our main subject area. To do that, create a new layer above the background layer. To do that, click this new layer icon and then rename it as subject. Make sure subject is in lowercase for the action to work properly. Now with the background layer selected, I'll be quickly selecting my main subject area. I'm using a quick selection tool. You can use any method you like. You can use pen tool, magic wand, anything which suits you best. Now let's select the subject layer. Let's take a hard round brush, any color, and fill up the main area. Make sure you're filling it up on the subject layer and not on the background layer. Now let's deselect the selection and again select the brush tool and making final adjustments. Okay, we did this done, we are good to go. Now select your main action, Windows Sketch 2 and hit play. It'll take some time for the action to finish, so we'll fast forward from here and return when the action is completed. So the action has finished rendering. Let's see what options we have, the layers and the folders that it generated over here. But before that, let me zoom in and show you the 100% resolution of the main image. Okay, so first we have our PG base. This one has a base color. Next we have our main vintage paper texture. I'm hiding this one to reveal our main base color, which is a flat color. You can change this one to any color that you want. I'm keeping the texture paper on, and again you can change the color of the main paper texture. Simply show this one and change the color from here. Next you can adjust the main paper brightness and contrast. To make the paper more darker or brighter. One thing I'd recommend over here is that this outer smudge border is another paper layer. So in that case, that is contained over here additional vintage paper effects. So if you plan to change the brightness, contrast, or the color of the main vintage paper, and you want this outside smudged area to look the same, then you also have to change those parameters accordingly over here. Okay, so I'll quickly undo. Next we have the background hatching elements. These are the hatching, random hatching shading areas around the main subject. So here we have many layers like background black, background white, and again few background black layers. You can adjust the opacity of these layers by simply lowering or increasing the opacity. You can mix and match, or you can hide few of the layers if you don't want them. Also, you can select the layer mask and take any brush and paint with color black to hide these layers, or with color white to show them. You can also move around these layers to different positions if you want. Next we have our background strokes. This folder contains various pencil scratches and lines. As you can see, this one also has different kinds of lines like straight lines, few hatchings, few stray marks, some scribblings, white scribblings, black scribblings, and all. You can also take the move tool, move them around, or right click and duplicate, and hit Ctrl T or Command T to bring up the free transform tool, rotate, resize, to all kind of operations. Next we have the background splatter elements. These are some ink marks. We have main background splatter 1, 2, and 3. You can paint on the layer mask with black if you wish to hide parts of these splatters, or with white if you want to show parts of the splatters. Next we have the main image elements. Here we have the main bulk of the image shading. So the first group we have is the image hatching elements. This creates the main hatching of the image. You can adjust the opacity of the various image hatching elements created over here. We have few white areas and rest we have black. Similarly, you can also paint on the layer mask with black to hide parts of the hatchings, or you can paint with white to show them, or you can also adjust the opacity of these layers if you want to tone down the hatching effects. Next we have inner lines. I'll zoom in a bit so that you can see the inner lines. So these are subtle pencil lines around the dark areas to create a more defining shape, to add more definition to the image. You can adjust the opacity or paint on the layer masks to hide parts you don't want. Next we have outer lines. This is the main bulk of the line which runs around your main selection. Next we have our contrast overlay. You can adjust the opacity to tone down the contrast of the image. Also, if you don't want these outer lines at any places, you can also paint with black on the layer mask to hide them. Now we have the additional vintage paper effects. Here we have the smudged border, which is the worn out paint around the border edges. You can simply hide this one to reveal your main complete shaded subject image, or you can show this one to create a more vintage and eroded and smudged out look. You can also change the color of this layer by simply turning on this color layer and changing the color, or you can adjust the brightness and contrast as I have shown earlier. Next we have the dark stain border, and we have paper cracks, more. It just intensifies the paper cracks. You can paint on the layer mask with black if you don't want these cracks at some places, like if you feel these are on the face or something, you can simply paint on the layer mask with white to hide them. Next we have the eroded edges. This creates the worn out paper effect around the edges of the paper, and we have eroded edges more, which creates more erosion effects around the edges. Here we have the additional texture effects, which creates more crumpled and adds some noise on the main image. You can simply hide them, or you can lower the opacity if you want. Next we have 10 color effects. You can simply turn them on and affect the overall image. And we have overall adjustments. Here we have overall levels. We have overall brightness and contrast, overall curves, overall hue saturation, overall gradient map. You can also change the blending mode, overall gradient fill. You can change the gradient color, and overall color fill. I'll quickly save this one and I'll show you one more example by running this on a cityscape. I'll take this image, and what I'll do over here is that I'll not mark some sharp areas, but what I'll do is I'll take a soft brush, reduce the hardness, take a color and mark approximately around the area that I want. Open the action and run it. We'll wait for some time and fast forward until the action is finished rendering. Okay, so the action has finished rendering, and this also has all similar layers and effects like the previous example that I showed you. The only difference is that since we did not have any defining area, so we will have our outer line elements around the area that we mark. So if you feel this is not right, you can simply hide this one for this kind of cityscape effects. Or you can take the layer mask and take some color black, take a round brush and paint on the areas that you don't want. Rest all layers behave the same as the previous example. Now I'll show you how you can write some signature and add more personalized effect to this image. To do that, expand this additional vintage paper effects and also expand the background base layer. Now select this vintage paper texture, and I recommend you select all, hold shift and select all three of them, then duplicate layers and then delete these two layers on what that was duplicated. I did that because I can only duplicate this layer also, but these two are added as clipping masks to this layer. So if I duplicate this one, these clipping masks will get released. Again, I have to apply the clipping mask. So you can do like that also, or by the by the method that I showed you. Now we'll take this paper effect and pull it above this smudged border brightness contrast, but below this dark stain border. We will show it, and then we'll click this layer mask icon to create a layer mask, and with this layer mask selected we will hit Ctrl plus I or Command plus I on Mac and turn it into a hidden layer mask. Now we'll create a new layer and take a type tool and type here with handwritten font. I'm using this font. I'll just increase the font size a bit. I'll take the move tool and reposition the text. Okay, I'll hit Control T or Command T to transform it and resize and reposition the text. Now what we will do is we'll create another layer mask, and with this layer mask selected, make sure you have black and white color set as foreground and background color. Go to Filter, Noise, and add noise with an amount of 80. Gaussian. I'm hitting OK. And now on this layer mask selected, I'll take some of the brushes which are provided in this vintage sketch 2 brush pack. I'll take this vintage sketch 2 brush number 16, and with the color white I'll slowly dab on the layer mask to reveal parts, and I can also change the color to black and hide some parts. Okay, now I'll take the select the vintage paper texture that was copied and select the layer mask and take this vintage sketch to brush number 20, and with the color white selected, I'll reduce the size of the brush a bit with the arrow key, with the square bracket keys, and I'll just press once or twice to reveal the paper texture behind the text so that the text stands out from our main image. Okay, so you can also select these two layers by holding Control, and then you can resize and reposition them together. Well, so that's it pretty much for the vintage sketch to Photoshop action. Hope you like it. See you soon.